This is Peak Earth. I'm Case Bradford. Thank you for tuning in to this episode with Andy Schoonover. He is the founder of CrowdHealth, which is an absolutely amazing innovation. It's an alternative to health insurance, and he's created a membership-based community that covers the cost of accidents when they occur. It's best for healthy small business owners and entrepreneurs because many of the health insurance options that are available are absolutely terrible. And this is what Andy experienced firsthand as an entrepreneur, and then decided, hey, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to create a better way. He took his pain, turned it into purpose, and is on a mission to provide this amazing new thing called CrowdHealth. And I am not an affiliate. This, podcast, I wanted to make sure it didn't sound like an infomercial because it really is absolutely amazing what he's doing. And health insurance, sure, it's most people I think find it pretty boring and terrible. So we touch on that just a little bit, and then we provide some context as to what Andy is doing. The principles there are very solid and awesome. They can be applied to other areas of life. How can we leverage the power of community and creativity to create a cooler world? And Andy's absolutely doing that with CrowdHealth. And I was inspired by this conversation. Andy's enthusiasm, courage, and creativity are contagious. There is a link down below to check out CrowdHealth and a coupon code to join there for anyone who wants to get started and check it out, because it really is a powerful alternative. I had someone tell me the other day that even though they don't have health insurance, they are charged a fee by their state, and CrowdHealth is still a lower cost, higher value alternative, which is absolutely awesome. So it's good to get the news out there. And with that being said, deeply appreciate you tuning in. Thank you. And I hope you enjoy this episode with Andy Schoonover. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me.
Stoked to be with you. Are you listened to the episode you made with Brett and Harry on the Meat Mafia? And I was blown away by what you're doing. It's just absolutely amazing. Never heard of anything like it. So I'm glad that you chose to come on and share your story and what you're up to with everyone listening. I'm excited.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to tell the story. It's a little bit crazy. When I started the company, and I'm sure we'll get more into it, people thought I was, batshit crazy for doing what I'm doing. But it's fun to, change the way that we're doing healthcare. So excited to talk more about it.
Absolutely. And so I know that for me, myself, I hear the word healthcare and my eyes kind of start to glaze over. It's just like, it's a topic that is so complex and boring, but I want to encourage everyone listening to hang on, because there is something deeper here and something really important, because a lot of this podcast is about health, holistic health, and there's a lot going on there, and the downstream consequence of what's going on with our health, I think, evolves in the healthcare, where everyone is sick because we have improper information about how to care for the human body, and then now we're all having to pay for this thing called healthcare, and the cost has been going up over time, and it seems like it's just this downstream consequence of our ill health, but it has very real impact on us, and I think a lot of people feel helpless. I know I myself, I feel helpless, because it's like, we need healthcare, we have to pay for this, and then we're basically subject to the system if an accident happens. But you're creating a new path, and a great path, especially for entrepreneurs or people who want to create a different system. So I guess I'm curious how you even came up with this idea in the first place and how you've evolved it over time. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we do gloss over when we hear healthcare. Let me just give you one data point that I think your listeners will be interested in. I've got a family of 4. My family of 4 saved about $20,000 this year on healthcare. And so it could be, I know we'll talk for about an hour. It could be, the most profitable hour of your day, just to kind of listen through this and hear the story of how you can save just a crap load of money, with your healthcare, and have much more control over your healthcare. And I know that's important to your listeners. So yeah, I mean, I started out back, I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial for a long time. I went to Stanford for business school, and it's kind of an entrepreneurial place. I saw Steve Jobs a couple times walking up and down University Avenue. The founder of Intel was a professor. Just an awesome place to be. And a lot of my friends went out and did the entrepreneurial thing, went and worked for Google and those types of folks. And this was 2006. And a quick funny story is that was, if you've seen the movie, the Social Network, there's a scene in that movie where Zuckerberg brings all of his buddies from Boston to Silicon Valley and rents a house when he gets out there. Well, the house he rented was our house. So between my first year and second year of business school, Zuckerberg and his buddies rented our house from us. And so I got to meet him a couple times. And there's a subplot in that movie where he had to go to Eduardo's dad, I think, and get $16,000 or $18,000 to rent this house. Well, it was our house. There was no zip lines from the chimneys. There was a pool in the backyard, and so a lot of it was kind of right on in the movie. But anyway, I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, so I actually bought a little company. And of all places, Dayton, Ohio. So I moved from Silicon Valley to Dayton, Ohio. Everybody was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you're crazy." But grew that company from a couple dozen employees to several hundred employees over a 7-year period. And we were doing healthcare. And I was kind of like, okay, this healthcare thing is kind of interesting because healthcare is a $4.3 trillion industry. So it's massive. There's a lot of good to be done within healthcare, and there's a lot of money to be made within healthcare. And so I was like, okay, this healthcare thing worked out for the first time. And then I sold that company to a private equity firm. I rolled off that, and I only had Cobra. So people who have lived through Cobra, it's wickedly expensive. And so I thought my only option was to go and get a healthcare.gov plan. That plan was, I think, $1,200 a month for my family. And I joked that it worked until I had to use it. My little one, who was 1 at the time, was having recurring ear infections. And so she had we went to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, who said she had a hole in her ear, a hole in her eardrum. And so we went and got that fixed at the local hospital and got the bill. It was a 15-minute procedure. Got the bill. It was $8,000. And I was like, holy crap, $8,000 for 15 minutes. But this is what insurance is for. Like, that's the whole point of having health insurance, right? Well, my insurance company said it was medically unnecessary, and so they weren't going to pay for it. And so I had to stroke an $8,000 check to the local hospital. And it was at that point where I was like, this insurance thing is a scam. And so I'm not going to do it anymore. And so I've been uninsured for something like 3.5 years, maybe even longer than that, maybe even 4 years. And I built a company to help people who are either uninsured or who would like to be free from the tyranny of health insurance to be able to, viably get their bills paid. And so that's in essence what CrowdHealth is. We're just allowing people to again free themselves from health insurance, and it's one of the coolest things that I've ever done for sure. And we now have, I think we've had a total of almost 7,000 people sign up. We've had 10,000 bills submitted to the platform, and every bill that's been submitted to the community has gotten paid. So, we're about almost 3 years in, 2.5 years in, and it's working. So it's been a fun journey.
Awesome. Wow. So this was a pain point for you, and you went about by solving it in a creative way by creating CrowdHealth. You're the CEO and founder of CrowdHealth, which is, I perceive it as a crowdsource based health insurance. Maybe you have a better way of describing it, but you mentioned there that there's 7,000 members and 10,000 bills have been paid, meaning that the members have had health problems, and instead of going to some nebulous entity, in the sky, the health insurance corporation, it's going to the members, and they're funding the health care with their own wallets.
Yeah, I kind of say it's back to the future because it's how we've done things for so long, hundreds of years, before health insurance plans. When somebody gets hurt, like the community, gathers around them and helps them in whatever way possible. And sometimes it's monetarily, and sometimes, back in the day, it was, going out to the fields and harvesting the crops when they couldn't do it because they were sick or whatever it may be. And so, we're trying to bring back that community component of healthcare. And, back in the 1970s, insurance companies and the government have kind of stuck themselves in between us and other people in our neighborhood, our neighbors, if you will. And, what we're trying to do is saying, hey, the government, the health insurance plans don't need to be in between you and your neighbors, and they surely don't need to be between you and your docs. And so what we're doing is enabling people to pay their bills directly to the doctor, or pay the doctor directly without health insurance. And therefore, the doctors are more willing to give really good rates because they don't have to deal with the bureaucracy of the health insurance plan. So, just quickly, how this would work is, if you broke your arm and it was $5,000, we would go to 50 people in the community and say, "Hey, would you help Case with $100? You have an account with us." They send $100 each to Case. Once you get to 5,000, you now have money in your account to go and pay for your broken arm. And given you can pay that directly, doctors are like, "Man, I don't have to bill health insurance. Like, that's amazing. I don't have to get approval from health insurance companies to provide you health care. That's amazing." They get 30% of their time back. They reduce their cost by another 30 or 40%. And as such, they're willing to give you much better rates. So that's in essence how we work, and we can get more into mechanics if you want to, but it's just a beautiful thing that you can go into your doctor and pay with a credit card. The doctor gets money immediately, and they're fired up about it. They're like, "We're so excited. Please send me more members of CrowdHealth," because they like getting paid. Where it's really, really hard to get paid by a health insurance plan. It takes a bunch of money and a bunch of people. There are 3 billers per every doctor in a typical doctor office. So that's the level of bureaucracy that you rip out by going in and using a model that we're using.
Wow, so much more efficient. It's so beautiful and way more elegant. It's better for you, better for me, better for the entire community, the doctors, better for almost everyone except the entire health insurance bureaucracy that seems to be siphoning off really a lot of energy and efficiency in our economy and in our nation. It's really pretty tragic just looking at it from a quick glance of the way you just described it. I'm curious, how did you mention that this is the way things used to be, but how did this idea occur to you back when you started the company and started kind of creating it from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most of these entrepreneurial companies start because somebody has a pain point, right? Like something really, really hurt, and they're like, I gotta fix this. And so, as I had this pain point, and I finally quit health insurance. My wife kind of looked at me and said, "Okay, we don't have health insurance. Like, how are we going to do this?" And so, it was almost by necessity that I started putting together the pieces. And the first thing that I didn't even know when my daughter had that $8,000 surgery, like I didn't know I can negotiate with the hospitals, but in fact, you can negotiate with the hospitals, and it's very, very easy to do. And so we started there. Like, okay, if we have a big health event, I can go and negotiate with the hospital. And so that $8,000 bill, we probably could have gotten for $2,000. I mean, that's the level of negotiation power that we have. And so what about a really big one? The way that I was going to figure it out is like, okay, if I had a big one, like a cancer or something, well, you can stretch those payments out over a pretty long period of time. That's the worst case scenario. But what if I had a bunch of other people who are willing to say, "You know what? I hate health insurance too, and I want to be in a community with you, and I'm willing to help you out if something goes on." Right. And so the bigger you can get this community, the more people you have to be like, "Okay, I'm willing to help you, Andy. I'm willing to be a part of this community." And so that's ultimately kind of what we've done is we put together this community where everybody's held up their hand and said, "Hey, I'm willing to help other people in the community if something else goes on." And so when I send that $100 to people, back to your example where you had that $5,000 broken arm, I'm actually telling them a little bit about Case. I'm telling them, like, has Case been a really good member of the community? So for the last 10 times somebody's asked Case for money, has he said yes, 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 or has he said no, 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 no? Right? Because if you said yes, 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 like, okay, you're a good member of the community. Like, I want to help you out. If you said no, 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 then it's like, you haven't helped anybody else out. I want to help you out. Right. And so it's not too different than, other communities that we're a part of that, like, hey, if you're a good member, like, I'm willing to help you. If you're not, then it's kind of like, why are you even here? And so, we tell people a little bit about you when you submit that bill. And so they can voluntarily say, yes or no to helping Case out in his bill. So like I said, it's worked, beautifully over the last, couple of years. And I think it's something like 97 or 98% of the time we ask people, they say yes. So, yeah, it's worked great.
And it is a really beautiful thing. And it's reason why I'd like to kind of maybe dwell on this underlying fundamental principle of crowd health for a moment, just the power of community. It is certainly something that is lacking in our lives. And it's a principle that could be applied in many different domains, but you've taken it and applied it to health insurance. And I'm curious of a few things about this, but first, just with the underlying foundation, how did you go from saying, okay, we don't have health insurance, to being like, I'm going to build an entire community of people who think like I do, who are going to be like collaborating in this method? Because now that you've got it running and it's working and it's beautiful, it's like great. But like, imagine, that's a daunting idea to come up with from scratch and then actually build out to the point where it's working beautifully. I'm really curious about how you went from ideation and like what formulated that idea. Like, were you always enamored with community? Did you read it in a book? Did you like stumble upon an idea from the sky? Or like, how did that actually manifest in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I wish I would have like taken better notes 3 or 4 years ago when I started the company to figure it out. I mean, it's one of those things where I just feel like I've got an entrepreneurial spirit, and if I see a problem, I'm going to figure out how to solve it. And so let's get creative in the way that we can solve it. And oftentimes within healthcare, as you said, starting the show, it's like so daunting that people are like, I don't even know where to start, like on this. I was fortunate enough to have a little bit of healthcare experience. And so I understood the industry, better than probably your normal, person walking along the street. And so I had a little bit of background. I was like, I think I can do this. The other benefit I have that, I had that others don't is I didn't need a salary. My first company went great. And so I didn't really need to do this. This is one of those things where it was more of a passion project. And so if it is a passion project, if it's missional, then it is much easier to just trudge through it and get something done, as opposed to doing it just to make money. And I always say, like, when I hire people, I hire missionaries. I don't hire mercenaries. Meaning, like, I want people who are on mission to say, like, this healthcare system sucks. We've got to fix it. We have 200,000 people every year, or excuse me, 200,000 families every year that go bankrupt because they have a big health event, even though they have health insurance. Like, let's do it for those 200,000 people. Let's do it for all these people who are paying, $10,000 or $20,000 a year for their health care and not using it at all. Right. Like, a lot of your listeners, I know your podcast, are probably sitting there being like, man, I'm healthy. I take care of myself. I work out 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. I eat right. And I have to pay $10,000 or $20,000, whatever it is, for healthcare. Like, that seems absolutely ridiculous to me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to help those people who are doing the right things, taking care of themselves, aren't going to be the ones with chronic conditions when they're 70s and 80s and not be a suck on society. Like, I want to help those people get really great healthcare, but not have to pay, a ridiculous amount of money for it. Like, that's what we're missionally about. And so, our average customer is 34. The BMI, we just looked at it the other day, is like 5 points lower than the national average. These are a lot of people who, take kind of self-sovereignty, personal responsibility as a very high priority in their lives. And so we've got a good group of people who, act right and do what they need to do. And not everybody, but most. And so you're in a community of those types of people who are like, man, I want to help people in the community like that. Right. Like, that's going to lower cost, overall. I mean, one cool, quick story, and sorry for rambling, but like, we had a guy who we limit your weight to 240. We make exceptions for people who have, significantly high muscle mass, but like 240 is a limit. We had a guy who was like 260, and he's like, I really want to be a member of CrowdHealth. And I was like, all right, dude, like, lose 20 pounds, like, and here's 3 or 4 different ways to do it. And the guy lost, I think he's down to like 195 now. He's a member of CrowdHealth. And he reached out on Twitter, and he's like, dude, you wouldn't believe this. I just came in 3rd in a triathlon because I've been working so hard. And I'm like, our system should be set up to incentivize people to get their act together and do the things that they need to do with their bodies, right? So that we don't have 70% of our, population being overweight and 40% being obese and things like that. And so that's what gets us fired up. You can't tell, I got a lot of energy around this. Like, that's what gets us fired up is like, man, I want to incentivize people to take care of themselves so they can run around the backyard with their grandkids when they're 80 years old. Like, that's beauty. Like, it's not just about money. It's like, how do we live better lives? And I kind of say, live hard, die fast, right? Like, I want to live really, really well. And then I want to die quickly, not over 3 years in, a nursing home, like because of a chronic condition. Like, I want to be out running when I'm 80 years old and like just fell out of my face and be gone, right? Like, that's the way I want to die. And I think if we take care of our bodies, like that's ultimately the way that most of us who take care of ourselves are going to die. You're just going to not wake up one day, or you're going to be working out and something's going to happen. You're going to be gone. Like, praise God. Like, that's the way I want to go. So sorry for rambling. I get fired up about, getting people together on mission to really like live more fulfilling lives. And I think you can do that through healthcare. So anyway, that's the mission behind this.
Thank you for that, Ramble. That was beautiful. And that got me fired up as well. And it dovetails perfectly off what we were talking about with the power of community, where there's that extra layer of what you just described, like that passion, that energy, where it's like, we can work together to be more than just, I'm paying $1, money for this thing. And it's this transactional commercial relationship. The community element is we're inspiring each other to be better and to live more and have a higher quality of life. And that is something that a lot of people are missing with this. And you're bringing it back through the vessel of health insurance, which is just awesome. And I'm curious now, are within the CrowdHealth community, are people engaging in conversation of this manner? Are they collaborating in ways beyond simply funding health insurance, or how does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's playing out in a couple different ways, and I'll kind of bring it back to kind of the status quo is health insurance, and the status quo is one where if you get hurt, you think that health insurance is screwing you because you're paying these big premiums every month, right? And so just human behavior is like, if I'm being screwed and now I need money, like I'm going to extract as much value out of that system as possible, because we're in like an enemy type of relationship here with our health insurance plans. The cool thing with CrowdHealth is in these communities, like people know that they're in a community. And so I'm not hurting some big corporation. I'm hurting another human being, right? Like if I try to extract as much value out of this, like I'm hurting Case, who's in my community, and Andy, who's in the community. It's not United Healthcare. Like that's just much more difficult to do. So we had a guy with colon cancer, and he's like, he reached out to us. He's like, look, I have colon cancer. I want the absolute best care possible, but I don't want to screw the community. So can you please help me find, good prices for the procedures that I need, right? And I'm like, who would ever do that, right? Like typically you're just like, throw down an insurance card and be like, I don't really care what it costs, and so people are actually like thinking about the community. One other one that's I thought was just amazing was we had this 19-year-old in Tennessee who last summer got her fingers chopped off in a boating accident. And so, and as you can probably imagine, like tens of thousands of dollars in bills. And so we sent this out to the community. We said, hey, this is what happened. And we had people come back where we asked for $100, and they came back and said, hey, like I couldn't imagine being 19 years old and losing, a limb basically. Like, can I give $200 instead of $100? And it's like you would never call United Healthcare and say, can I pay a more higher premium this month just because I'm feeling altruistic? Like it just would never, ever happen. Right. And so the cool thing about this is like my money, I know exactly where it's going. It's not getting sent to some big corporation and they decide who to pay and who not to pay. It's like, no, my money is helping Abby, who's 19 in Tennessee, because she had a big health event. Like that's a beautiful thing, I think. And that's where the community can kind of, collaborate with each other and help each other out. We're trying to build some more tools where, if I help Case can then, say, hey, thank you. Or I can send him a note to Case and be like, man, you're in my thoughts and prayers case. Like, I hope you get better. Like, we're trying to create some back and forth with that within the app. It's on our, dev plan for 2024. So we're trying to get more of that. And if anybody who's listening to this has any great ideas on how to continue to kind of build that community, since it's such an important, part of what we do, I'm all ears. So we're trying the best that we can do to keep that community, even though it's digital. It's a digital community, but I think we've seen within social media platforms and things like that, some of these digital communities can be very, very powerful.
Yeah, it is. It is cool to think about. And those are awesome stories and examples, because I imagine that feels good for the person paying to be able to know, okay, this is Abby, she's hurt herself and I'm going to send extra money. Like there's a feedback, there's a flow there that the generosity is going to have a greater impact on the person paying and funding that. And they'll be able to feel good about themselves for days, probably weeks, months, maybe. And it's like the whole rest of their life could be, if they're like really, sentimental about it. It's like, that's so much different than paying a faceless bill to the corporation every month through health insurance. And that is impactful. Like that psychological component is big. And I guess one thing that comes to mind as a random idea is like, what if people were clumped through zip code and you could have CrowdHealth, fitness meetups, or people could meet up and, go for jogs or something.
Yeah. We had we were at a convention. Let's see, it was back in, I think it was May. Was it May? No, July. It was in July in Miami. And we, in this convention, we had like a little, CrowdHealth happy hour. And so, I think we had somewhere between 100 and 150 people, CrowdHealth members, show up at this CrowdHealth happy hour. So it was fun getting to see everybody and getting to know folks and things like that, because we had interacted on Twitter or something, like, now you can see a face with a name or a Twitter handle or whatever. And so it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see. And everybody was like fired up about healthcare. And as you said, like, it's hard to get fired up about healthcare. Because it's so daunting and it's so ridiculous and everybody hates it. And so I hope you don't get like 2 views on this, because people see like healthcare, I'm not interested. But hopefully those who have listened are like, okay, this can be interesting and valuable to me. Like I said, you can save a ton of money doing this. I think it's probably worthwhile to be like, hey, for a single person, it's $175 a month. And so, it's significantly less than if you're going to healthcare.gov. It's probably less than if you're getting paid by your employer for your healthcare. And again, your help, that money is going to not a corporation, it's going to other people. And so I think you can probably look at those dollars a little bit differently. For a family of 4, it's, right around $600 a month. And so it's, still, I was paying $1,200 this year. If I was on Obamacare, it would have been $1,400. So instead of paying $1,400 a month, I'm paying $600 a month. And there's no huge deductibles either. So the other way this works is, for Obamacare this year, I would have a $14,000 deductible, meaning I have to pay the first $14,000 and I have to pay $1,400 a month. So in essence, I'm paying almost $30,000 before, the CrowdHealth, or before the health insurance plan pays anything. With CrowdHealth, I'm paying around $6,000 and the first $500 of any health event. So, unfortunately, 3 weeks ago, I went to the ER for something. I'm fine. It was a total fluke thing, but the bill was $20,000. And so with CrowdHealth, I'm paying the first 500 and the community is picking up the rest. If I was under health insurance, I'd have to pay the first 14,000 and then the community would pick up the rest. So I saved 13,500 of deductible this year, and I saved, $700 or $800 a month. So that's another $10,000 a year. I saved $24,000 this year by using CrowdHealth versus having a healthcare.gov plan. And that's a family of 4. So, it'd be less than that if I was a single person, and more than that probably if I had more folks in my family. But that gives you a sense of like how much more efficient this is than, your typical health insurance plan.
It's astounding. And what's coming to mind is the best fit for CrowdHealth? I know anybody could, but I'm just thinking of like the top tier would be entrepreneurs, right? Because they are, not being offered an insurance plan by their employer, so they have to go find their own on the open market, which is the options there are pretty bad.
Terrible.
And CrowdHealth is such a superior option to what is currently available.
Our number one group of people are entrepreneurs. So they're entrepreneurs, freelancers, gig workers. I kind of put those all in the entrepreneurial basket. They're like, I don't want to work for the man. Like, I don't want to work for a big corporation. I want to work for myself. And so that's the number one by far group of people who are Crowd Health members. Interestingly, number two are doctors and nurses. They see the stupidity of this system. And so they're like, I want to get involved too. And so the medical profession is our number two, funny enough. So yeah, we love the entrepreneurs, and they just have this like personal responsibility ethic that works really, really well within our community, right? Like they'll want to know like, hey, I want to go get the best doctor at the best price. Like that's almost a game for them. Like, I want to game this system, and you can game the system. So, we've got some crazy scenarios where this one woman in Arizona, actually, I think she's having her surgery today. The local hospital, brain surgery. Her local hospital told her it was going to be $77,000 to have this surgery. And so we said, hey, can we look for another doctor for you? And we found one that was like, I think 10 miles down the road that was at a better hospital, a better doctor. And he's charging something like $27,000 for the same surgery. So we went 10 miles down the road, and this woman, or the community, saved $50,000. And wow, that's how screwed up our system is. I mean, and I have story after story after story like that. And it's just like, if people allow us to find them a really great doc, we can find them a really great doc at a reasonable price. And that means, the community is, has to pitch in less that month to help, people with their bills. So it's a pretty cool thing. And it's just kind of maximizing the inefficiencies of the healthcare market. And that's why we're so much less expensive than your typical health plan.
It's awesome. And I have a few questions coming to mind. These may be a bit of a tangent, but with something like socialized healthcare, I know that's a big topic, but just in general, a lot of people think, well, our healthcare should be like Canada, where it's just part of our taxes and it's all free, versus, some of these issues that we see will be part of like an open, just a consequence of capitalism, I guess, in a way. But what do you think about those two options versus what CrowdHealth, which seems to be almost something in the middle of those two to me? But what are your thoughts on something like socialized medicine as a potential solution?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, like, you work for whoever pays you, and right now your doctor is primarily getting paid by insurance companies and the government. And so the doctors don't work for you. Like, you may be sitting there in their room, but they actually are working for the insurance companies and the government, because that's who's paying them. And so, one of the things that, again, a bunch of cool stories around this, but like, once you start paying the doctor directly, the relationship changes. The doctor now works for you, right? I'll give you a quick example. A part of this, ER thing I had to go to the cardiologist. And so the cardiologist is like, hey, I need you to get a test. I was like, great, let me go get a test. So I went and got this test. And he's like, you know what? If you had insurance, I'd ask you to come back and we could go and review your test. But since you're paying me directly, can I just call you on the telephone? And I won't charge you. I'll just have a quick conversation. I'm like, you mean I can save like probably an hour or two out of my day and not have to sit in a doctor's office and not have to pay your $250 fee, and you can just call me? Like, hell yeah, I will do that, right? and so just the dynamic changes between doctor and patient. And so, like, I think that doctor-patient relationship is gold. I don't think an insurance company or a government should get in between that. And so if you go to socialized medicine, yes, it will be probably a little bit cheaper than what we're currently paying. Our members are getting about 125% rates that are about 125% of Medicare, so 25% more than Medicare. And so would you pay 25% more to have that doctor-patient relationship, go wherever you can want? I say yes to that. And you don't have these long wait lists that you have in Canada. Canada, I think has like a 6 or 9 month wait list on, very kind of run of the mill surgeries, right? So are you can wait, like, and so, I just I don't like the socialized medicine, because I don't think the government should be involved in my healthcare. I think it should be between me and my doctor. So, that's the way that I feel about it. And will you save a little bit of money? Maybe, but let's be very, very clear. That's not free, right? You are paying for it through your taxes, and so they have much higher taxes than we have. And so, I'd prefer to, again, lower our taxes and let us have the, patient doctor relationship where I'm paying that person in cash. And then if there's a big health event, have a community of people who are willing to back me up in some of these big health events, so that I don't have, financial, issues as a result of big health events. I mean, that's the whole point. And so we've had 0 people go bankrupt. We've had 0 people take on medical debt as a result of CrowdHealth. Like I said, been around for 2.5 years now. 7,000 people total have signed up. So that's a lot. That's a pretty big, sample size. And so it's working. I think this could be the way that we all do it. And that's kind of the vision.
That's awesome. And you're at the point now where you've proven it works. You've got a large sample size. So now it's like, okay, everybody come on board. Is there a point where you think the scaling of CrowdHealth would get too big? Is that ever a problem, or do you not see that as an issue?
Yeah, what we're doing and right now is we're setting up what we're calling little crowds. And so we think the community component is so important that there are crowds that you are in. The founders crowd is what we're calling it, which is just people who started from the beginning, who've been with us for a while. They're in the founders crowd. We've set up another crowd. We have found that with kind of the self-sovereignty, personal responsibility, people who in Bitcoin really like what we're doing. And so we have a Bitcoin crowd where the Bitcoin crowd members are helping each other with their expenses. And so I'd like to put together a fitness crowd for people who are into fitness, or a keto carnivore crowd who are people into keto and carnivore, or, maybe even like a faith-based crowd for people who are of a certain faith. And so if you can have a community, find a community that resonates with you, we think there'll be behavioral changes in that. And so, look, for in 5 years, I hope we have, 20 different communities that you can choose from. Each one has 10,000 members in it. And so it's small enough that you actually feel like you're a part of the community, but big enough so that if something really big were to happen, you have lots of people there to help you. That's ultimately where we want to go. So, and I think that's a reasonable thing. So we're looking at building some new communities of people that have shared interests. Who would you want to fund your healthcare? Would you want to send it to the guy who's 340 pounds, who's eating, chocolate brownies on the couch? Or do we want the guys like you and the meat mafia guys who are, eating raw milk, who eat lots of animal protein, who I'm assuming, I'm making some assumptions about you, Case, but if you listen to the meat mafia guys, I know a little bit about you already. But that's the importance of that community, right? Like that community, they're like, man, I want to be a part of these other people who are doing the same thing. So like if something bad happens to them, it's not because they're eating like crap. It's probably just like bad shit happens sometimes, our number one expense is pregnancies. So we got a lot of people who are having babies. Like, I don't know what it is. It's water in the water or something with CrowdHealth members. But the number 2 expense is active injuries. Like, so these are people who are out doing active things under the sun, and it just happens. Like, people tear ACLs, tear Achilles, face plant on mountain bikes. Like, that stuff just happens. And I'm like, if I'm going to fund healthcare costs, like, I want to fund that stuff. Like, people who are actually being active, thriving in life, and just something bad happens, because it's going to happen. Like, it just is. I was in the ER, like I said, 3 weeks ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was just a random bad, stupid thing that happened. And it's just like, it had nothing to do with the fact that I'm, on keto. I'm 180 pounds. I'm 6'2". Like, I'm in shape. I work out 4 times a week. Like, it just happens sometimes. So, if there's anybody else out there that wants to, help out other people and, the same kind of demographic as you, come and hang out with us. You're not giving your money to a big corporation. You're giving money directly to another person that's probably a lot like you.
What did happen to you a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I was on a Zoom call like this, And all of a sudden, I could not speak. I could not, words were not coming out of my mouth, like, and they were gobbledygook. And so I thought I was having a stroke. So went to the ER and just found out that I have migraines. And so I have a really bad migraine. It's called migraine with an aura that, you know, when people in their 40s and their 50s get. I mean, I, I don't know what the source of that was. I was, I don't know, 7 or 8 days into a carnivore, thing. So I was like eating, I mean, well, I think sometimes like when you go hard on carnivore or even keto, like there's an electrolyte issue that I may not have been, satisfying appropriately. And so I'm not sure exactly what happened, but again, it happened. Unfortunately, it's a migraine. So if it happens again, I know what's going on. It's not that I'm having a stroke. It's just I'm having a migraine. So yeah, just one of those crappy things, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's one of the weird things about life where it's just like we'll be chugging along, doing everything right, or so we think, or based on everything that we're aware of, and then all of a sudden, like something will just happen out of the blue. It's so bizarre, and that's why health insurance is such a helpful thing to have, and why it's a great innovation that our society has created. Although it's become dilapidated over time, and you're regenerating it to be something new and awesome. But it's like these things just happen. Like I was washing a knife the other day and just like sawed it into my finger just because I was wasn't paying
Yeah.
attention. Didn't go to the hospital, but it was like close to the point where I was like, should I go get stitches for this? It's not stopping the blood. But yeah, it's like these things, they're unavoidable, and it's a bummer part of life. But we just gotta do the best we can to do what we can with it, I guess. And yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
helpful to have a community that has our back and that is going through similar things. And there was something you mentioned earlier that I'd love to learn more about, and it was about the fitness requirements or the health requirements to sign up for CrowdHealth. What does that entail, and like how did you formulate that? Because it's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, it was like I want to incentivize people to, get healthy. Um, and so we started, a weight limit, and we have actually been bringing that weight limit down over time. In hopes that we could, incentivize people or encourage people to lose weight, to eat better. We do a ton of education at Crowd Health too around like nutrition and diet and things like that. About once every 2 months, we give away a free book, and a lot of that stuff has to do with nutrition. So we gave away, I don't know if you know Peter Attia, he's a pretty well known doctor. His book Outlive, I think we gave away like a couple hundred copies of that book to our members who wanted them. And so we're trying to get people to be healthier in the way that they live. And so we're down to 240. It probably will go down, another 10 or 20 pounds next year. And so that's one. And then two is smokers. If you're a smoker, we just don't, we don't do it. So those are the only two. And then if you're over 65, you can't join, but that's less about your health and more about a regulatory issue that we can't regulatorily, have people over 65 pay cash for things that Medicare will pay for. So it's just, we can't do it. So those are the only kind of three things that we keep people out of the community for. If you have a pre-existing condition, then we ask you to own your own pre-existing condition for the first 2 years, and then the community will help you out with it after that. So we've got lots of people with thyroid, hypothyroidism. We got a lot of people with high blood pressure, those types of things. And those meds to control those are like so inexpensive. I have a family member who's on Crowd Health and has, I think, hyperthyroidism and high blood pressure. And, those two meds to control that was like $20 a month. So it's really inexpensive. And we give you access to really low cost meds, again, by ripping the middleman out of that equation. And so you have access to things that are, 10, $20 a month. And so people are, more than willing to pay that for the first couple of years to be a part of the community. But those are the only kind of limitations on who can join or what we will fund.
That's really fascinating, and it makes me think how some people, they get healthy and they get off meds over time. And for example, I made a podcast episode with this guy, Steve Hendricks. He's wrote a book called The Oldest Cure in the World. It's about multi-day fasting. He did a 2-week fast up in that was at the True North Health Center. So that's a fasting center where you go and do these really long fasts. And he got off 4 different prescriptions and he hasn't gone back. It was for
Incredible.
things like anti-anxiety, antidepressant, sleeping at night. It's so like the people do get off medications that they're on long-term. Is there a protocol or a plan within CrowdHealth to help people transition from prescription to more natural living, or is that kind of not even allowed?
No, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I haven't really even thought about it because not a lot of people, some people use prescriptions, not a lot of people don't. So we got a pretty healthy group, but I think it's a really good idea. And you know, and I think that the other thing too that we realize with an insurance fueled system is that doctors do medication first and nutrition second. And they do nutrition second because none of them have studied nutrition. And you know, it's something like 6 to 10 hours of your entire medical school journey is on nutrition. The Association of Internal Medicine does, I think you've got to get like recertified every 10 years or something like that if you're an internal medicine doc. And last year's test had 0 questions on nutrition. This is internal medicine. Like, this is people who are supposed to be knowing what's going on internally within your body and how to impact those things. And there's 0 on nutrition. And so doctors just don't understand nutrition. And so that's one of the big, I think, challenges with our system, because all these, you know, pharmaceutical companies are like, screw nutrition, eat what you want. We'll try to figure out with meds, not fully. And we don't think we fully understand how these meds are truly impacting our body chemistry and, you know, ultimately leading to worse outcomes instead of better outcomes. So, yeah, we are very forward thinking in terms of nutrition, and we try to get our people, you know, like I said, I'm keto / carnivore, depending upon the day you talk to me. And I think that's just one of the, you know, things that have helped me be, you know, fairly healthy over the last 5 years. And so is my family. You know, my little ones, not as much, but most of us are kind of a keto carnivore type of eater. So, and I would say probably a third, maybe even more than that, are keto carnivore folks within the community. So it's a big group of people.
It's very cool, and there's something about that, just the energy of sovereignty that you mentioned with entrepreneurship. That spills in the diet as well, and then that typically draws people into more of the keto carnivore direction. And the unfortunate thing about our, you know, the medical system being educated in nutrition, even if they were educated in nutrition, it would probably be not, you know, true nutrition, and probably be
That's totally
something
true. Yeah, it's kind of like a blessing and a curse. You're like, it's kind of a curse because they have known nothing about nutrition, but it's probably good that they know nothing about nutrition, because all the nutrition advice that I see is somehow fueled by pharma and big food and all these kinds of things, who want you to, you know, and who want you to look at the food pyramid and say, oh, you know, the core of our diet should be grain heavy, low cost, highly processed crap. And so, you know, and then you have the meat kind of almost at the very top. That's like just a little tiny bit. And you're like, yeah, maybe it's good that they haven't been educated, but that means that folks like us have the responsibility to educate people. You know, we have to kind of get through some of the barriers there of like, oh, I thought that, you know, I'm supposed to be eating lots of, you know, Cheerios in the morning.
Yeah, it is, and it's making me think, even with this deeper level, you're a brilliant guy, and you've been doing entrepreneurship for a while, and now doing this completely new thing, CrowdHealth, that's really changing the world and has a ton of potential. How do you see the way the American system is operating? It seems like, to me, that a lot of these industrial systems are just way outdated, and it seems like we're potentially headed for some big collapse. But what gives me hope is exactly what you're doing. Something like CrowdHealth, things like carnivore, Bitcoin, these emerging new ideas that give us a new opportunity, a new hope. Are you hopeful for the future that we'll be able to innovate our way out of this mess, or are you more pessimistic about some sort of coming crash?
Yeah, I mean, it depends upon the day. It depends upon the day. I mean, I'm generally hopeful, or else I wouldn't be, you know, doing this, right? I mean, but you know, look, and I say this carefully, because I don't want it to look at like, you know, some solicitation, but it's like, if you see a system that is going awry, that is going to collapse. I think, given your audience, we're seeing a food system that is going awry and could collapse. We're seeing a monetary system that's going awry and could collapse. A healthcare system. Like, you've got to support alternatives, right? You can't sit here and say, this healthcare system sucks, but I'm going to go and continue to fuel it, like put my money towards it. Like, you can't do that, right? You can't go, hey, I'm a Bitcoiner. I'm in the Bitcoin Commons in Austin right now. You can probably see it in back of me. I can't say that I think the monetary system is going to explode, but then not support Bitcoin companies who are trying to give me a parallel economy, a parallel monetary economy. Like, you've got to vote with your dollars and help some of these companies who are spending tons of money trying to figure out some parallel ways of doing things that will, I think, ultimately not be parallel, but will be the main ways of doing things. But we just need support from your followers who are doing this. So I'm just trying to get the word out there to say, hey, come help these companies because they're building cool things, but it costs money. I mean, I'm $12 million into this company. And I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I truly want to, I want to help, people who have gotten screwed by our system. Like, that's ultimately my goal. And if this goes really, really well and we sell it for lots and lots of money, I kind of joke, like, I'm going to go buy a new fishing rod. Like, that's what I want. Like, this is not me like accumulating, wealth and crap. It like truly is like trying to help, kind of build a system that has been so broken. So that's the only thing I ask you, your members, like, are your listeners, like, hey, go follow some of these companies. If it's CrowdHealth, great. If it's not, like, that's fine too. But like, go support some of these companies that are trying to build a parallel system to something that is probably going to fall apart.
I agree. We do have the power to build the parallel system, to build the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. And you're doing this with your creative energy. And I can tell by what you're doing, it's not for the intention of money. It's for the intention of creating a better world. I can hear it through the stories that you're sharing and through the way that you describe what you're doing. And I really appreciate the work that you are doing every day and the time that you spent sharing these stories with me. And I'd like to give you some opportunity here to say anything that you maybe didn't share, you'd like to conclude with. And of course, down below, we'll have the raw milk community for people who want to, or who are enthused to get started. And I encourage everyone who's interested to sign up and get going with it. And before we do conclude, I'd love to give you some space and here to say anything, last words. And I've really enjoyed hearing everything that you've shared. And thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on again. And Join CrowdHealth is where you can find us online, joincrowdhealth.com. Join CrowdHealth is kind of our handle at all the social media platforms. And so come in and join us. We kind of get fun and a little sassy about the system, food system and healthcare system, monetary system too, primarily. We do have, like I said, a Bitcoin community. And so, if you're into Bitcoin, you can join the Bitcoin community. We're launching a way to fund each other over Lightning in January or February of next year. So if you're into the Bitcoin community and you want to support a Bitcoin company, we'd love that as well. If you're not into Bitcoin, then we have a dollar denominated community as well. And so that they're both big enough to get some of these big bills. And by the way, we've paid bills help people get pays from like a $49 pediatric visit to surgeries that are several $100,000s. So this is for the big ones and the small ones. So go to joincrowdhealth.com if you have any questions. There's a link on the very, very bottom that if you want to actually talk to somebody, you can set up a call with somebody to talk about some more questions. So use raw milk, three months for $99 a month per person. So would love for you to get that community started.
Awesome. Andy, thank you.
Thanks, guys.